for my fellow gamers out there, I have a question to ask you because this is a question that has been on my mind for a while. Is your favorite video game your most played video game of all time? Because me personally, it's not mine. All right. Some of my favorite video games of all time are like Little Big Planet, Dungeon Defenders, Castle Crashers, um, what else? Pokemon. You know what I'm saying? They are games that I have played a lot of, but they are nowhere near my most played video games of all time. My most played video games are probably like Dead by Daylight, Brawlhalla, Call of Duty. There's a couple, unironically, a couple FIFA games are on there as well. For Honor is starting to get up there. It's a video game I play quite frequently. Not my most played video game of all time, but it's definitely a video game that I frequent myself in playing. I guess for someone like me who plays a lot of video games, there is a clear difference between the game that you play the most and your overall favorite game. Because I'll tell you one thing right now, I have like a decent amount of games that are in my rotation of games that I play a lot of, and I can tell you for certain that those are nowhere near my favorite games of all time. Minecraft, I love it to death. You know what I'm saying? It's probably not my favorite video game of all time. What I consider my favorite video games are games that I always have fun playing. So, like I said before, I always have fun playing Castle Crashers. I always have fun playing Dungeon Defenders. I always have fun playing Pokemon, and I usually always have fun playing other games. You know what I'm saying? Certain games like For Honor or Dead by Daylight, I don't always have fun playing them. That's why they'll never really be considered my favorite games of all time. I play them a lot because I'll tell you one thing about those about games like Dead by Daylight and For Honor and games that are my favorite games, like again Dungeon Defenders, Castle Crashers, all of them games, etc. The games that I just mentioned, like Dungeon Defenders, Castle Crashers, etc. Those games will consistently be fun to me. However, games like Dead by Daylight and Brawlhalla and games like that, they have way higher highs and extremely low lows, which is why I also like to play those games like that. And the games that I do regularly play, they're very rage-inducing games. All right, they're games that you can either, like I said, you can either have the highest highs or the highest lows. And trust me, those lows are some of the worst lows of gaming history that you could ever experience while playing video games. I just gotta close this door because it's about to get really goddamn emotional in here. Anyways, back to the video topic. What I want to be talking about are the 7 deadly video games. Basically, it's like 7 video games that, in my opinion, perfectly embody or encapsulate the 7 deadly sins in their own specific sins. Starting off with the sin sloth. Basically, sloth kind of represents apathy, laziness, and just the lack of effort to ever want to do anything good. And you know what? This might sound a bit crazy, but I'm going to put like a whole line of games here because I actually have this for 2 of my sins, and we'll get to that in a second. But the game or games that represent sloth to me, in my opinion, are sports games. Because yes, certain sports games do things. Like if you ask me, I think the NBA Street games are like some of the greatest sports games ever created, probably the best sports games ever created. But the overall identity of sports games just isn't there. I feel like almost every single NBA is the exact same. Almost every single FIFA is the exact same. Again, there are certain games that break this mold in this specific category, like I said, like NBA or NFL Street, NBA Street, or FIFA Street. Those games are phenomenal because they do something very, very different with the actual game that's given to them. But I will say, though, that sports games, in my opinion, are like the laziest types of games because they're almost like the exact same every single year with like slight additions to rosters or changes to rosters to like bigger teams and stuff like that. And even in certain games, they have to take away certain teams because they don't have the license for it. Like for example, I remember from FIFA 23 to FC 24, they lost the licensing for the Brazil national team, which means a lot of the Brazilian players, Brazilian leagues, even strip the Brazilian national team was no longer in FC 24, which really sucked for me because I liked playing the career mode and I liked playing for those different types of South American teams. I'm pretty sure the only South American team that you can play is it Argentina? Is that the only South American team you can play as? I'm pretty sure it is because I don't know if Brazil is in the most recent FC 20 is in the most recent FIFA, which sucks. But yeah, for sloth, I got most sports games. Next up, I have gluttony. And gluttony is described as like the overindulgence or the selfish misuse of food, drink, or just overall material possessions. Mostly when you hear the word gluttony, you probably think about food, but gluttony isn't just food. It is literally just the point of like selfish consumption to the point where like there's like literally no point of consuming that specific thing. The sin or the game that perfectly reflects this sin is Fortnite, and I'm going to explain to you. Fortnite ladies and gentlemen, eats and consumes IPs and crossovers like they're full course meals. Almost every single IP that you can think of that is somewhat popular is in Fortnite right now. It's crazy. Like think of like the first thing that comes to your mind of anything from like pop culture related. It's probably in Fortnite. I can't think of a lot right now because there's a lot of stuff that comes to mind. Goku, a lot of different anime characters are in there, like Goku, Naruto. I think even Jujutsu Kaisen is in there. Godzilla, I'm pretty sure is in there. Stranger Things is in there. What else comes to mind? A bunch of superheroes. I know they did something with season 4, but even then, like a bunch of actual superheroes are in Fortnite. Ariana Grande. Did I say Ariana Grande? A bunch of celebrities like Ariana Grande. I know Snoop Dogg is in there. A bunch of different IPs and stuff is in Fortnite to the point where like it almost gaps and completely destroys every other game in terms of competition, in terms of like just straight up having IPs in the game. So for gluttony, I got Fortnite. Just because Fortnite represents a seven deadly sin, that does not mean I think it's a bad game. Okay, I don't even think the majority of the games on this list are bad games. Like sports games, I don't think they're bad. Like I said, I just think they're lazy. You know, and same thing with Fortnite. It's not a bad game. It just has so many IPs, and I don't see any other game with this amount of IPs and content in it. So for gluttony, I have Fortnite. So lust is described as an intense, disordered, or uncontrolled craving, primarily regarding overall sexual desire. Now, this can go from intense longing or lecherly objectification and straight up misplaced desires. You know what video game perfectly describes that? Genshin Impact, because everyone in that fandom and everyone who plays that game loves children. Let's move on to the sin of pride. So, the sin of pride can be described as having high self esteem, arrogance, and just being or feeling superior to other people. And I'm gonna tell you this right now, Dead by Daylight gamers are the most egotistical gamers that you can possibly come across in the gaming community, all right? There is not another group of gamers that'll tell you how much better they are than you at a video game that is nowhere as competitive as they make it out to be, all right? I love Dead by Daylight. It's not one of my favorite games of all time, but it's definitely one of my most played because it has an extremely addictive and fun gameplay loop. But there is a lot of stuff about this game that makes it extremely unbalanced. And that's because that's the nature of it. All right. I made a video back last year around July of 2025 that describes my personal feelings of Dead by Daylight and why I don't think it'll ever be considered a competitive game just because of the overall nature of it. But you have people in the Dead by Daylight community that will swear up and down that this is the most competitive game in the world and that they are so much better than you at it. From survivors saying how good they are at the game and complaining about how bad their teammates are, even though they barely last long in chase, to killers that always either complain about the game being unbalanced or complain that that stuff that survivors have is broken, or the fact that they're just complaining about how easy the games are, which trust me, that like almost never happens on like the killer side. Bro, the pride and egotistical problems that Dead by Daylight have are so big that almost every single controversy has almost nothing to do with outside problems, and it's always a game thing, which I find so interesting, right? Because the most of the times that you find controversies about people in a specific gaming community, it never has to do with the game itself. It always has something to do with the actual person. With Dead by Daylight, it's always about the game, which I find honestly hilarious, to be honest. That just shows how ethical and how much people love Dead by Daylight. But there's not a more prideful and egotistical group of people than Dead by Daylight players. Next up, I have the sin of greed, and greed can be described as the selfish desire of money, possessions, and just overall wealth in general. And I think the games that perfectly describe this, and it's also the same way how I had for Sloth, where I say I'm going to put like a line of games here, but the games that I have that represent greed perfectly, in my opinion, is any Call of Duty post 2020. So like Warzone, Black Ops 6, Cold War, um, Call of Duty Vanguard, Black Ops 7, all those games, like post 2020, like past 2020. And that is because I think after 2020 is when microtransactions pretty much almost killed Call of Duty off completely. No one is worried about the next Call of Duty because they're not only is it lazy, but 10 times out of 10 or 9 times out of 10, if you're not including like, unless you're like Cold War exactly, because I quite like playing Cold War, I'm not gonna lie. But 9 times out of 10, Activision and Call of Duty will release some bullshit slop that is only there for them to make money, whether they're overpricing the hell out of their game or they put a billion microtransactions in there so they can still take money from you. But for the games that represent greed the most, I have most of the Call of Duties that are made past 2020. So the sin of envy can be considered as the intense, painful resentment or sadness at another person's good fortune, talents, or possessions, coupled with a desire to possess them or see them destroyed. This might sound a bit surprising, but I think the game that perfectly describes this is For Honor, and I'm going to explain why. So usually when you die in For Honor, in my opinion, right, I want to say 7 to 8 times out of 10, it was probably a situation where you could have won if you played it better. You know what I'm saying? If you're getting hit a bunch of times, you could have gotten one parry off and rallied back. If you were, let's say if you were getting jumped, you probably could have played better defense and get revenge. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times when you die in For Honor, I'd say more times than not, comfortably more times than not, you could have played around it, all right? Now, that doesn't make any of what I just said less cheap, but where I'm going with this is that it is mostly a skill reason to why you lose, and why you're so upset at losing in For Honor is because the other person is just simply better than you, or they've hit you with something that you've never seen before and weren't prepared for. So in essence, you envy the person that you lost to because in your mind, you know that you lost because you lost those interactions and they were better than you in that interaction or that 1v1 or whatever the situation was. They were better than you. Or at least that's just how I feel about For Honor, you know? Because even though I do think there are a lot of stupid stuff in For Honor, like trust me, there's a lot of stupid stuff. Like the game is like sometimes whenever you are getting hit with like a heavy attack or a light attack and you try and put the icon in the area so you don't get hit, and when you do put the icon in the area you still get hit for some reason. It's so weird, but sometimes stuff like that happens. And also bleed is like probably like the worst mechanic in the goddamn game. But other stuff usually though, like that's very small stuff and just overall game stuff, you know what I'm saying? Where the sin of envy comes in is that the majority of the times when you lose, you could have played against that stuff, you know what I'm saying? And because you could play against it, and the only reason why you would lose a game of For Honor is because someone else was better than you would want to be better than that person, which is why I think envy fits For Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, it all comes down to this. We've done all of the other deadly sins, and I wanted to save Wrath for last, okay? And there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to save Wrath for last. For one, the majority of these games can be put in Wrath because they make you rage that much, okay? And two, I just think that what I'm about to say for the game of Wrath, I can't say for other games because I find enjoyment in any of these other games, except for maybe Genshin Impact, but that's because I've never really played it before. But all the other games that I've listed, from the sports games to the Call of Duty to For Honor to Fortnite to Genshin Impact to Dead by Daylight. Did I say Dead by Daylight? Basically, all the other games that I've listed, I can find enjoyment in it. For the game that I have in Wrath, I have absolutely no enjoyment for this game at all. Wrath can be described as destructive behavior or overall intense anger. And the game that describes this to a T, in my opinion, is Brawlhalla.
I can't win anything!
He's not good with sight.
That did not catch me. How? That did. How are we losing to ball?
I'm off this game, bro. I can't play this game. I can't play this game, bro. I'm not playing.
Okay, I did some damage to him. How?
Bro, I swear to fucking God, bro. This nigga keeps spamming the same fucking move over and over, bro. Bro, if I find out who you are, bro, don't let me find out who you are, bro. I can't do anything, bro. I can't do anything.
I don't feel anything but anger when I play Brawlhalla. I don't feel happiness. I don't feel joy. I don't feel any positive emotions when playing Brawlhalla. I don't feel good whenever I get a good read on my opponent. I don't feel good when I get a win against my opponent. I don't feel good when I lose against my opponent. I don't feel good when I boot up this game. I don't feel good moving my character. I don't feel good picking up weapons. I don't feel good throwing weapons. I don't feel good about playing anything in this game because everything feels so unsafe all the time whenever you're playing Brawlhalla. Now, it might come different from me because I've been playing Brawlhalla, or I've known about Brawlhalla since 2017. I've been playing Brawlhalla, and I've known about Brawlhalla for like about 9, almost 10 years of my life. And I've seen a lot of stuff when it comes to this game. I've seen I've seen the release canon. I've seen the release Greatsword. That Greatsword on release might actually be like a genuine terrorist attack to the Brawlhalla community because Jay Yun, from like the first couple months of Greatsword's release, ran shit in Brawlhalla, but that's neither here nor there. The reason why I have Brawlhalla and Wrath and not any of the other games listed here is because in any of these other games, like I said before, I can feel some form of enjoyment in them. You know what I'm saying? And let's say For Honor, you know what I'm saying? You finally beat that opponent that was causing you so much trouble because you finally understood how they play and what moves they're going to hit you in. And Dead by Daylight, you can load into a game and completely either destroy people as killer or you completely loop the killer around as a survivor. There are ways that you can play around and have fun playing those games. When I play Brawlhalla, ladies and gentlemen, no, I feel nothing but stress and anger when playing it. This game does not make me happy. It doesn't make me feel anything but anger and sadness. Nothing but negative emotions overwhelms me whenever I play Brawlhalla. And that is why for Wrath, I have Brawlhalla. Now, this goes without saying, but this list is 100% subjective. It is my personal opinion on what I feel about these specific games. And me personally, I don't really like any of these games like that, and I would never consider them any of my favorite games just for the fact that they lean so harsh into these negative feelings or negative stereotypes or negative sins, just straight up. Like, they lean so hard in the negative territory of those specific things, which is why I could never really get behind them as them being my favorite games. They're still fun games to play. You know what I'm saying? For Honor, Dead by Daylight, certain Call of Duty games post 2020. I've never played Genshin Impact, so I wouldn't know if that game's fun. Fortnite, again, I think it's one of the greatest video games ever created. And any sports games, even stuff like FIFA, you could have fun, or I guess FC now, or EAFC now, because FIFA no longer owns it. But the sports games can still be fun if you play with other people, or you make like very good plays in them. What I'm getting at though is that they represent such harsh emotions that I could never consider them being my personal favorite games and being some of like the biggest sins in gaming history. But that's it for me. You know what I'm saying? Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, share this video with people, and leave comments down below on what you guys want to see from me next, because me personally, I'm running out of ideas. I'm going to be real with you. That's why I post some bullshit like this. But hey, see you on the next video.
Can you go point, let them know that my hands really lethal? How many times did I see you? Twice. Both of the times I just beat you. Text, clips, see through. I know you